Hello and a warm welcome to a very special podcast series, Unusual Suspects. I'm your host, Gaurav Choudhury. This is a series about unraveling stories of entrepreneurs, investors, professionals, of course, philanthropists and policymakers who are disruptors, yet not in your face. In each episode, I speak to one such leader or leaders, talking to her or him or them about their lives, businesses, inspirations, interests, challenges, and pivot moments and turning points. Unusual Suspect streams on Earshot.in, Spotify.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, moneycontrol.com, and a host of other podcast streaming platforms and directories. This episode is about the green economy, and we all know this has got embedded in our lives in a manner that was probably unimaginable, say, about 10 years ago, and all of us are in it together. There's no gainsaying the fact that the green economy can drive India to its self sufficiency goal, but structural challenges hinder this progress. Many green sectors, for instance, are extremely capital intensive. Finance, therefore, becomes critical to seed and scale these value chains. Without adequate support, early stage green initiatives struggle to achieve their potential, and for a capital scarce economy like India, this is absolutely essential that we address this issue. To brainstorm on the question how India can remain competitive on green industries, we are joined by experts who know these areas like the back of their palms. We are joined by Nagaraja Prakasam, partner, Acumen advisor, and mentor in residence at NSRCEL IIM Bangalore, member investment committee, IIT Madras Incubator, mentor at CIIE IIM Ahmedabad. We also have Mirik Gogri, head of corporate strategy, Aarti Industries, founder India's Translational Research Initiative, principal Spectrum Impact. And we also have Sri Krishna Sridhar Murthy, co-founder and CEO of Sattva Consulting. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. Delighted to have you here.
Great to be
It's a
here.
pleasure.
Thanks, God.
Thank you.
Mr. Nagaraj, Mr. Prakasam, can I start with you first? Let's start with a fundamental question. Let's try and understand this. What is structurally missing in India's green innovation to scale pipeline? Let's if you cut back over the last decade or so, we have seen some steady progress in, say, for instance, one of the visible and the most visible and tangible progress you can see is in electric mobility. And then there have also been a significant progress that we have achieved in, say, recycling technologies, bio inputs. Having said that, however, achieving scale remains some kind of an, as of now, insurmountable barrier. That is something that we haven't been able to crack the code yet. In your experience of mentoring startups and sitting on investment committees, tell us, where do you see commercialization most often breaking down in green value chains, Mr. Prakasam?
Yeah, if you pick up, thanks, Gaurav. If you pick up the mobility, for example, right? I remember asking 15 years back, the Reva car, right, the Chetan, that can you get me a EV with the chauffeur driven? And he said it's not possible. The laws does not allow, regulatory framework is not there. But today I do have an EV by Tata, right? So I think we have come a long way in terms of the ecosystem. But as you rightly said, especially the mobility sector, if you look at it, it's still kind of for the affluent, right? Because the expensive, it's becoming very, very expensive, probably two times the ICE engine, the electric, because we are importing the battery component, which seems to be a very, very expensive one. So that's number one issue. It's not able to go widely as we expected. The second reason is about the ecosystem, right? I do have a EV. I have around 7 apps for charging, and none of them are reliable. So I think that's the infrastructure that we would need. We as a country, we're starving for electricity, right? If you have an even a Bangalore place like startup capital, if you go probably a week without any power cut, I think that's a great achievement. So I think that is another challenge. Even we have a lot of investments happening. There is quite a bit of Tata has put out, and BP, everyone is installing charging station. But I've seen places the charger is run by a diesel engine, right? So that defeats the purpose of a green at all. I think these two are the major element as a country has shown the world in telecom industry how the regulatory framework and probably reduce their tariffs and stuff. So we're able to get the access to the technology to the more wide masses. Similar thing we would need in terms of the green economy, especially the mobility sector, so that the prices comes down and become affordable to everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also you alluded to the telecom sector, and that's a great example because that is a sector where creative destruction has actually brought down prices from where it was. Progressively, as the sector and the industry achieves scale, it has become more and more affordable. And that is why we can see wide adaptability. Mr. Gogri, if I may come to you, you through your work with India's Transnational Research Initiative, you have highlighted the gap between early stage research and late stage commercial products, and the suggestion to establish a transnational research centers or centers as shared national assets that can be used by people. And this is also importantly found mentioned in this year's the government's economic survey. That said, in practical terms, how is this transnational bottleneck translational rather bottleneck affecting India's ability to scale green industries? And if we treat green value chains such as energy, circular systems, and biomanufacturing as national industrial priorities, how the Translational Research Institute or a center model accelerate their journey from lab to industrial scale commercialization? Help us understand from your experience and the learnings from the Translational Research Initiative. Mr. Gogri?
No, thank you. Thank you so much for this. So let me just first explain the word translational itself because I think that gives the context. So effectively, the whole idea is how do you take ideas and innovation in the lab to commercialization, and generally there is something called as a value of death in between, because what you are able to do in the lab and what a commercial entity wants or what is bankable is different. So that's sort of the value of debt. How do you make an idea bankable so that finance, as we discussed, flows in? Right now, if you look at solar, it's bankable, but 15 years ago it wasn't. So there was a gap which was filled in that case. So the whole point is pretty similar. To make something translate from lab to commercialization, what is required? Effectively, what is required is to scale it up. Now, unfortunately, the infrastructure and the mindset required to scale up technologies is quite different than innovating the technology. And that's why it is required to have these pieces of infrastructure at the right places, which is accessible. So one thing is large companies. So again, I wear the corporate strategy hat at Aarti Industries. We may have as a private company infrastructure for our chemical sector, or some other company may have it for some other sector. But is it accessible more broadly? That becomes the question. So our whole thought process is, if you want to sort of encourage innovation to really scale up, you will need to build these translational research centers across a variety of domains. Nagaji pointed out that, say, batteries. Now, if you think about batteries, and if you want to not only import batteries and use it in our cars, but make the battery cells, you need a translational centers for rapid prototyping of batteries, maybe a 20 megawatt hour prototyping line in which all the innovations can be tried, tested, so that they can eventually be taken up by industry. So that's sort of the idea. So we already have identified 50 such sectors across variety of areas, including say ceramics or batteries or biotech, mRNA, so on and so forth. And as you rightly mentioned, this year, even in the economic survey, it was acknowledged the importance of translational research center as national infrastructure project itself, and that's
Absolutely.
also our aim. So we want to not only leverage industries and philanthropists, but also coordinate with the government to build these centers, and not only just build them. I think there is an aspect of softer aspects. So how do you run them in a way that commercialization happens? So it's a combination of the hard infra that needs to be built, but a soft infra as well. So that's sort of the philosophy, and we believe I would. It's a long-term project. You cannot expect that if it happens in say day one, then in year one only results will happen. It will take some time, but that breeds the culture that any idea now can go to commercialization much more faster, become much more investor friendly, and then sort of start the flywheel. We like to call it ignite India's innovation engine, and we feel that these centers are sort of very critical to that. So thank you, Gaurav.
Absolutely. Uh, it's you put it very well, because it's essentially, it is all about moving from lab to scale in a seamless way, and getting the maximum benefits of the research carried out in labs, in real life, uh, examples, industries, so that scalability can be achieved significantly. Mr. Srikrishna, Sridhar, let's come to that. Let's, given India's R&D gaps, and there are significant R&D gaps, because if you look at it from an overall budgetary perspective, also we have significant ground to cover. But having said that, directionally, I think we are in the right path. Given these gaps, is a translational research a high leverage area for investment to strengthen the lab to market journey of Indian innovation? Specifically, do you think philanthropy can play a catalytic role? Because early investment requires a lot of de-risking in shared infrastructure, and can this actually be, executed from the laboratory to the industrial scale, especially in models like ANRF's ATRI scheme that require multi-stakeholder commitments. Mr. Sridhar?
Thank you, Gaurav. I think it's a very interesting time we are in, where a lot of these things are falling in place. The ecosystem maturing, CSR maturing, philanthropy maturing, and I do believe that the Indian ecosystem on innovation in all of these sectors, especially which are sustainable, is more at a early stage of development, and hence philanthropy can definitely accelerate that whole piece. So three data points I want to kind of share with you. One, this year almost CSR in India is close to $5 billion at an annual level, and at the same time, individual philanthropy is also on the rise, and there's an estimation of $3 to $5 billion. So we are seeing that serious amount of capital. The second is less than 30% of this can be uh, absorbed by traditional philanthropic sources, right? Which what we traditionally look at as NGOs, nonprofits, programs on the ground type of ecosystems, because they were not kind of built for this kind of scale. Because all of this money has come in really in the last 5-7 years, and the nonprofit ecosystem has not had the time to kind of build institutionally, to this scale. The third is the fact that there is a role for CSR and philanthropy in nation building and being catalytic. 10 years of CSR is equal to 1 month of GST. So no matter how much that CSR is going to be, you're not going to solve the operational challenges. You can only catalyze India's development, right? Because CSR is not for just operational, and no better catalytical investment than research and innovation, at this point, right? So
Absolutely.
with all of these, I think it's with, and also the fact that there are now organizations like ITRI, like NSRCEL that Naga is involved with, or Social Alphas of the world, have all actually set up very, very good platforms, shown what's possible. That serious amount of demonstration has been done. I think that's an important thing. But that doesn't, the role of philanthropy doesn't end there, because India has more structural challenges even beyond, right? Once, let's say, incubation happens and you get to your bit of revenue, there is a bit of a challenge post revenue as well. It takes about close to 7 lenders for you to get anywhere between 2 to 5 crores of debt in India. And that's very hard for, even from a scaling perspective, right? It's not just about getting the technology out. Even from a working capital point of view, Indian SMEs are reasonably starved. So I think there's a role of philanthropy in coming up with more accessible debt, loan guarantees, and many, many other instruments. So blended finance will also play an interesting role with philanthropy support to unlock more mainstream capital to complement the philanthropy. So we have to ensure that the whole plumbing of the capital value chain has been done very well with very high risk philanthropy, which is, let's say, someone like Spectrum coming in, or ITRI coming in at a personal philanthropy level, followed by CSR, followed by blended finance, and then mainstream capital. So this plumbing is very important for the ecosystem to work on. And if we do that, I think, no doubt that we will actually accelerate, given the talent and the hunger is there in India to build all of these things. Back to you, Gaurav.
Absolutely. Mr. Prakasam, you have emphasized building ecosystem, not just backing companies, and that's a fundamental difference because ecosystems, it can trigger multiplier effects, whereas just backing individual companies will not. With the results will be at best be the impact will at best be suboptimal. What does ecosystem building actually look like for green ventures in India today? And do we often mistake technical readiness for system readiness? And that is where we sometimes lose the plot, if I may say so. Mr. Nagaraj.
I think ecosystem is very, very important, Gaurav, right? If you look at, so I have an NGO in Tamil Nadu where we said, no English, no PowerPoint, because ideas could come from anywhere, right? And if a person in Madurai had been put up in Bangalore and he cannot speak a word of English, and they will say he has a communication problem. So India is a very interesting place with diverse, language, 700 plus languages, right? And that is where we thought, how do we plow the local ecosystem and to support this entrepreneur? So this person in Madurai is supported by investors from Madurai. So I think it took 10 years today, but it's I'm very happy to see the progress that it's made because the traditional investors created a new asset class to invest in startups. Similarly, a person sitting in Madurai should not feel that I'm not confident enough to go compete with other startups elsewhere. And he is trying to solve a problem locally, right? So that is one example of how ecosystem really helps because we need a development across the country, not metros alone. I think this created a environment. I'm glad that government, Tamil Nadu government, pretty much taken over our initiative that startup TN is now taking to the smaller towns of the state rather than focusing on Tamil Nadu. If we come back to Bangalore, like at NSRCEL, what Krishna was mentioning, and we saw that women entrepreneurship, for example, right, 15 years back we picked up that women joining the workforce could push up 2% of GDP. So we ended up focusing on how do we bring these women into entrepreneurial ecosystem. And today we are very glad across the country it's been picked up that today that in our system almost 1,000 women entrepreneurs go through the system. The number one thing we provide them is just the confidence, right? That you can do it. I think that giving them the abilities that I also can go and do it. So like this is what ecosystem can do, right? Individually, people may be working, but when they come in as a cohort and they say that I'm part of this cohort, they just have a network effect happening because they're talking with the like-minded people. I think that's what the academic institution best for, right? If I'm studying X and Y institute, it's always you go back as alumni, right? I think that is what giving the ecosystem effect multiplier because they themselves solving problems, they themselves becoming customers, donors, they themselves becoming investors as well. So that is the second. The third part is about it is not only about among the entrepreneurs but about all the stakeholders. So we conduct a lot of stakeholder meeting roundtables, right? So recently we had a roundtable about energy, right? At the point you mentioned earlier, and this Bill Gates breakthrough energy came to India, and they started looking at there is a lot of focus on one energy alone, but what about the rest of it? Like 20% is energy green problems, and rest of the 80% not focus happening. So we brought investors, we brought entrepreneurs, we brought some CSR as well. Started even government started discussing about why this skewness happening. Then there is a emerging solution coming out about wow, okay, so there are areas that's not been focused on, so all of us as a stakeholder start working towards that ecosystem, right? It could be a nature based solution, it could be land, it could be agriculture, it could be just a livelihood, right? All these elements that need to be fixed, which is what I always mention as well, that when the country is aspiring to become a 30 trillion in 2047, and when all of us start consuming like the Americans, right, what will happen to the green economy? In Bangalore, we have 100 cars per 1,000 people. Look at the traffic issue. And India's average is 23 cars per 1,000 people. US is 700 cars per 1,000 people. When we hit the 700 cars per 1,000 people in India, where is the place to put the cars? I think that is why we need a little paradigm shift in the way we start looking at green economy. I think that is what the ecosystem will help us to understand, pinpoint the problem so that all of us stakeholders can make a right decision. Yeah, yeah, Gaurav.
Absolutely. Mr. Gogri, uh, representing the industry perspective and operating within a company like Aarti Industries, which has deep manufacturing capabilities, what are the real conditions required for a green technology to scale commercially? I ask you this question, and I would like you to respond wearing both your hats, both as a corporate as well as an investor hat. Where does that breakdown most often occur? When it breaks down. It doesn't, because of the lack of ability to scale, whether it's technology validation, whether it's pilot economics, or manufacturing scale up, or demand certainty or uncertainty. Mr. Gogri?
Sure. So look, I think there are so many sort of areas where it can break down, but the couple of things that I feel are absolutely critical. So whatever we say about green economy and everything, Indian economics is the king. So for you to get maybe one pilot by a company which is open and it's more progressive and all that, it's fine. You will be able to get that one pilot or maybe a second pilot to do it. But for any technology, for any startup or company to take it to the next level, when they really scale it up to 10, 20, 30 customers, economics is the most critical thing. So I think the unit economics of any technology, which is true not only for green economy, I think it will be true across the board, but that remains. So the mindset of, can is there a green premium and things like that, I don't think realistically in the Indian context, also to scale globally also, I don't think that will work. So that's the number one thing, that a technology maybe not on the first iteration, but there has to be a clear line of sight for the economics to work out. So that becomes absolutely critical. The second, which also is sort of under valued, is lot of this green innovation is a B2B sector. Suppose someone comes to a company like us as a heat pump, providing a heat pump or providing, say, alternative fuels for my boiler, or giving me energy efficient insulation and things like that. In a B2B sector, the companies like us also tend to be very conservative, because look, I am running a big manufacturing plant. So it's not only the cost, the reliability, safety, and some of the other aspects which are not generally considered also come to fruition. So you might have an economically wonderful product itself, but suppose it's highly risky in a way, right? Suppose you are handling hydrogen in an unsafe manner, it might be better in an economics perspective. It will still face a lot of conservatism in even companies like us. So we are generally as a company more open to give startups trial opportunities, but our thresholds are also very clear. We can give a trial opportunity, but after that, the economics, safety, reliability has to start taking over. So that's why this importance of reliability and safety requires an ecosystem, as was mentioned earlier by Naga, which is beyond just solving the technology part. Because if you want to build a reliable product, you need an expertise of a vendor or a partner who has built something at least similar or analogous. And how do you take that expertise in becomes very, very crucial. So I think that would be my sense, that building reliability, safety, all of those factors starts becoming very important, and economics is the most crucial thing. I would say corporates are quite open these days also. So it's not only us, like we have seen other corporates. Mahindra Group is a brilliant example. Aditya Birlas are there. A lot of cement companies, Dalmia Cement. And again, I don't want to specifically name companies, but in general, corporates are pretty open to engage, but they also want some scale. So this is the classic gap. A corporate generally wants, I want, say, a solar corporate I know tells, look, I want a solution for 1 gigawatt. Now this company is at 1 megawatt. So where's the sort of middle ground? Sort of comes back to my original point on, you need those intermediary facilities for corporates to gain the confidence. So again, multiple values of death, but I think the good thing is corporates are definitely much more open nowadays. So we are getting there. That would be my
Yeah,
sense.
right. Mr. Sridhar, let's come to you. And you have a front row seat of what's the changes that are happening, as well as also you have a view, which of some kind of a 30,000 feet view from the big picture lens across emerging green value chains. what's missing the full stack support that connects research, pilots, capital, and credible market access? Is that what is missing? Or would an ITRI style translational model accelerate commercial scale through coordinated capital and shared infrastructure? What's your view?
I think the magic word I have learned, Gaurav, is and. Right, we need this and this and this and this. The number of ands required here. So I think um, there is also, in addition to everything that Mirik said of economics, to making sure that the scale happens. We also have to ensure that we don't overload some of these enterprises with ambition, aspiration as well. Not every green enterprise has to be a unicorn. A lot of them will end up being SMEs. It's great to build many. India needs many green 500 crore companies, rather than two unicorns, right? And but this whole the way the startup play in India, we have to accept that SME is a real success, right? It's not necessary that everything has to be this mega, unicorn kind of a story, and hence fit to that ecosystem, because the economics will only, you can't raise a $10 million round and then expect to kind of, not get the economics right, right? It won't kind of fit. Somewhere the system will break. So we have to fit to the need of the market, because we are talking about sovereignty of India's tech stack, and make sure that gets done. The second is, I think we need a lot of the ecosystems coming together. I think a lot of these ecosystems are today working in silos. Some of these ecosystems are evolving, but they're also working in silos, right? Because we are talking setting in the middle of Samaj Sarkar Bazaar. There is a philanthropy ecosystem, there is a business ecosystem, there's a policy ecosystem, and all of this kind of comes together at a district level, state level, national level. So sitting in the middle and tying some of these things, I think is also a huge thing, and that can be done if more data is also available. Today discovery of some of these things is a big challenge. To Naga's point, someone sitting in Bangalore may completely miss the non PPT, non English speaking Madurai, green tech startup, because it just, you're not able to discover each other, right? India has close to 963 incubators, and most of the money goes to literally the top 20. The rest of them, I don't think people even know that so many incubators exist in the country, type of stuff. So data and discoverability, is very important, and that will happen if we come out of this unicorn hat and start looking for great SMEs that can be built in the country, in every corner of India, building great technology, for our, kind of businesses, and solving for our ecosystem. So we have to really, it's a brilliant that entire pyramid of the stack. Yes, there will be a couple of unicorns, but we have to build the entire ecosystem of the pyramid, through that whole process. So that's the way, we should all operate.
Absolutely.
Back to
Naga, if I
Gaurav.
may come to you, and let's talk a little bit about your book Back to Bharat, where you distinguish between carbon fixers, quote unquote, and carbon preventers. So help us understand this distinction. And secondly, do you see a similar dynamic in green value chains today, where some segments attract capital fairly rapidly on a relative scale, while more foundational parts of the ecosystem continue to struggle for attention, particularly in terms of raising capital? Naga?
So I think the raising capital in India is still driven by the overseas money. Almost 90% of the Series B plus money comes from overseas, right? That means that people are going to look at investment in early rounds where somebody can come from US and bail them out. And thanks to people like Mirik, I think this is going to change shortly, but it's going to take a little more time. I think until that happens, people will solve problem where the Western world understood. So that's what I always say about, Elon Musk makes $1 billion selling carbon credit. Yeah. And what about our weaver? What I'm wearing is a handloom. And we have 9 million weavers producing sustainable fashion. Right? There's no energy utilized. These are all maybe organic cotton, natural dye, and they're as good as to the planet compared to the EV, right? But that is not being looked at. I think that is what I mentioned about. If you look at today, there are a billion people in the country. I call it as living sustainably, and they are aspiring to come out of that to live like the rest of the 400 million which are not living sustainably, right? So as we grow and this 1 billion is started consuming, 1 billion started coming, and that probably Earth may not be enough for us, right? I think the country is asking, give us 50 years, let me pull out people out of poverty, then we are in the equal plane compared to the developed countries. But the 50 years is a long time. That is where we have an advantage now. How do we celebrate the simple lives today? That's what I mentioned in my book. I was in East Gaurav Hills and see a person, wearing one towel across his waist, probably built his own house using mud and bamboo, and there is one CFL lamp sitting there, right? That's about it. And calculate his carbon, my carbon, your carbon, somebody living in New York and London. If carbon is a new gold, who's rich, right? So US is almost 7 times more than us in terms of GDP. Their per capita emission is 6 times more than us compared to India, right? So that is where the carbon has a major role. That's what I was kind of hinting in my book about how do we celebrate the carbon preventers today, right? So the billion people who are preventing carbon, which we are ignoring. And we are celebrating the fixers because somebody creates a problem and now somebody else is fixing that fixers are celebrated, right? What about somebody who never created a problem? It's like same thing in your school, right? In a class of people just crying baby get all the help, but there will be a quiet child and doing all the homework properly, which is not getting attention at all. So this is what happening today as well. That there are a lot of sectors who are preventing carbon, which is being completely ignored by the entire world, where we are very busy doing the fixing part. I think that
Mm,
is where we have potentials. So that is why I mentioned earlier the paradigm shift about do we need to chase the GDP, right? Is that
mm,
the only measure? And the highest GDP country is not happy today, right? And
mm,
you saw that what is happening across the world. And this
mm.
is what that India has a great potential as we grow. What is the sustainable future that we want to build that we can showcase the rest of the world? And the richest country in the world is not happy. And why are we chasing the GDP alone? It's important. We need to bring people out of poverty. But when we bring them out of the poverty, is it sustainable? I think that is the
Right.
part I bring it out in the book, Gaurav. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mirik, uh, through Spectrum Impact, you have deployed capital across climate technologies globally, including green hydrogen, lithium extraction, advanced materials, and next generation food systems. Uh, Within India's four major green value chains, as it were, energy transition, circular economy, bioeconomy, and nature based solutions, where do you see the strongest industrial upside today, Merrick?
I think in those, my sense is bioenergy gives us a very unique opportunity as a country. So again, it's contextual to India. I think India produces 700 million tons of agriculture bio waste. There is 200 million tons of excess agriculture bio waste, which again leads to some of the stubble burning issues as well. This is obviously this all this value is trapped in the rural area, rural economy, which if it's tapped into, as Naga also mentioned, we will be able to create more work or more sort of livelihoods as well in economic development in the rural area simultaneously, because India has a large import bill. This bioenergy sources from agriculture bio waste can reduce our import dependency as well. So I think bioenergy, in my mind, again, I am only talking about compressed biogas or bio briquettes, but if you add the ethanol story also, so that I think is a very interesting story with all its caveats. Like again, whenever you do overdo something, there are maybe challenges, which is true for a lot of these things. But bioenergy story in India is something which I am pretty bullish on as a concept, and we are also as Spectrum deploying across the value chain, whether it's sourcing of biomass to upgrading the biomass in different ways. How do you get the lignin out and things like that? So that is definitely something which is quite good. I think there are other areas as well. I think circularity, as you rightly mentioned, as one of the key pillars. However, there is a lot of tech intervention going to be required in circularity because of the nature of circularity. You need to, there are so many different sources of material, like plastic waste is there, metal waste is there, textile waste is there. And how do you take the waste and create value requires almost a lot of vision AI and sorting capabilities, which again something which we are investing in. So I think the pathway to all of these successes will be different. Some will be more operational driven, on ground operationals and logistics. Some would be more AI and tech driven pathways, but I think circularity and bioenergy definitely quite good. Solar, I would say, has already sort of taken up, but India still doesn't own sort of unique solar technologies now, or the next generation solar technologies. So that's again an area. There's peroxide solar cells, which we are again backing in India. So how do you take the standard solar module panel of say 22% efficiency and get it to 28% by a breakthrough technology of tandem peroxide solar cells? And those again, these are long decision period times. And solar again, India will be pretty good at because of the geography itself. We are already seeing the benefits. But now imagine if its solar panel is 25% more efficient, then the cost that we are anyway seeing right now will go even better. So those I think are the green shoots. If I can share, there may be some basic challenges where I don't see the ecosystem also working.
Right.
If you look at base
Hmm.
load clean energy, like the really deep tech sectors of say geothermal technology or next generation fusion or fission technologies. There are a few startups, but very less working on those. Even if you look at advanced materials in India, generally people look at materials or alternative materials as packaging. Like take plastic and give me a new packaging. That's fine, but I would go so far to say that what about nanomaterials? What about advanced alloys? What about next generation ceramics? I think these are some deep tech and sustainable tech area intersections which are still less. I again, IIT Madras is a brilliant example where there is some green shoots that we are also aware of, but again, as an ecosystem, it still requires further sort of incubation, I would say.
Absolutely. Sri, final question to you. If you could redesign one element of CSR or catalytic capital governance today, what would you change to unlock long gestation green innovation? Sri?
I think if we can, build both incentive and a lot more awareness for funding, research and innovation, Gaurav, I think it'll go a really long way. We need to find a way to either create a brand incentive or some kind of financial incentive or even a value incentive, giving a little more flexibility to fund research and innovation through philanthropy and CSR. We also there is a huge opportunity for CSR to play the blended finance role. If the law, there's a social stock exchange and so many other things that are coming up, where if the for-profit SME ecosystem, which are impact oriented, can be part of the social stock exchange, where CSR can bring in capital, those will be quite revolutionary because you will start getting access to the right kind of capital in a more structured format and hopefully at scale, through some of these ecosystems. So a larger incentive slash, some kind of a carrot for philanthropy to increase their funding into innovation would be a huge boost.
Great. That's a great note to end this very wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Nagaraja Prakasam, Mirik Gogri, and Sri Krishna Sridhar Murthy, for taking the time out and dropping by to have this wonderful conversation with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.